So today we have actually a presentation by the New York State Department of Agriculture. And one of the things that I like to do is meet people. And in Binghamton, there is a family that moved there, I'm going to say in the last 2 years. This is an individual who works for the New York State Department of Agriculture. His name is Robert Sullivan. Hopefully he'll be able to make it today. But if not, his partner in crime, another colleague at work, Michael Giambalvo, who is on today with us, they're going to present really what the purpose and how the Department of Agriculture really plays an integral role in making sure that our food system and the food that comes to our table all the way from farm to table truly isn't just destroying other crops and making sure that the systems in place, monitoring our agriculture farms, even trees that are growing on streets are not eroding themselves and causing others to erode with them. So in addition to sharing a little bit about the Department of Agriculture and their purpose, today he'll also specifically focus on the Spotted Lanternfly survey and inspection protocol. So in general, and then more specific, so we can learn it specifically to one specific product, or I should say insect that they test for. So I am going to spot Mike's I'm going to say Zoom box, but his screen, he doesn't have his camera on, but he will be presenting with the PowerPoint as well. So Mike, if you want to unmute yourself, and then you can begin with your presentation.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
And can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we see perfectly.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Michael Giambalvo from New York State Department of Agriculture, specifically the plant division of the agency, which there's other divisions like for dairy and for development of agricultural programs. Robert unfortunately couldn't make it today. He's outside doing his duties, probably inspecting a grower or a seller of some plant material. So I'll be taking over for his section of the presentation, and which just gives you some general background about what we do. And then I'll go into the Spotted Lanternfly survey. The New York State Department of Agriculture is part of a system of other state Department of Agricultures that was set up to do just what we're going to talk about today, which is stop pests from spreading and hurting our agricultural commodities. So here are some of the programs that our department runs on a regular basis. Plant inspections, also known as FITO, include both the stateside as well as the international shipments of plants and plant parts, which can include lumber and fruit as well as seeds in some cases, which leads to our next general program of commodities. This includes seed, fertilizer, lime, mulch, many of which require a label. And we'll go into some more detail about the labeling later. The other item of note is that some seeds can harbor fungi or bacteria. So all commercially available seeds are actually cleaned, and many are steam cleaned to make sure they don't spread pathogens. Our department is also involved in the new program of hemp, also called industrial hemp, which produces both grain and fiber, as well as CBD. We make sure that what is grown stays within the legal limit of 0.3% THC. Finally, we also do inspection and trapping for pests that are both in New York and those that may arrive in nearby states or USDA concerns they may have entered. And you'll see several of those pests concerned here listed, which are invasive in many ways. Spotted lanternfly from Asia, Asian longhorn beetle from Asia attacks maple trees, which can threaten our maple syrup industry. Plum Pox Virus threatens stone fruit like cherries and plums. golden nematode's been around over 100 years, and we've been containing it within certain farms in New York State. Emerald ash borer, unfortunately killing all the ash trees, but we release parasitoids to combat this pest. And European cherry fruit fly also attacks cherries, but is confined to a very small portion of the state, just a few counties. So these are a few videos that he put on here, so I'm going to see if they can play for you all. So, oh, maybe they're not videos. They're just like short. Okay.
Probably live pictures from an iPhone.
Yeah. For plant inspections, we do both greenhouse and retail inspection points. That's what's shown in these two images. In a few places, we have field-grown trees that we inspect. Retail in many ways has become more important over time as we have a greater movement of plants from state to state in stores. Often plants sold in New York start in New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Florida, California, and Oregon. Some even come from Canada, and most bulbs actually arrive from the Netherlands across the Atlantic. So there's a lot to inspect. Here's a picture of a common problem with the witch hazel tree. It's an aphid, and it needs birch to complete its life cycle. And a disease of concern, which is Impatience downy mildew, which has been an issue for impatiens plants, often used decoratively. And the mildew grows in a high humidity condition, and it's difficult to treat. So that far right image was taken in a greenhouse, usually a high humidity environment. Seed labeling, we'll check the dates to make sure the label totals 100%. Rarely it doesn't. All states have rules in regards to seed, and when it needs to be relabeled or is not able to be sold, you should be able to see the list of states and corresponding last date of sale. You can also see that it is both lawn and agriculture seed that is covered by this law. So there'll be vegetable seeds, there'll be grass seeds. Sorry if I'm a little lost. This is Robert's part of the Okay, yeah, so here are the dates that New York State uses by product type. Other states may have different rules. New York State, as a cold state, generally has a long time frame when other states, for the last date of sale. Labels must include items like lot number, date of test or last date of sale, seed variety name. If more than one variety, then they must be listed in order of precedence on the label, with the greatest percent listed as the first. So that means like oftentimes grass turf seed will have multiple species in one bag. So it's listed by the percentage of each type of grass seed inside one bag. And these dates are important because seed loses viability over time as it ages. Some seeds die, some seeds won't germinate as easily. So that's why one reason the dates are important. So we do this, and the idea of truth in advertising, we want people to get what they're paying for when they buy a product. This includes healthy plants, viable seed fertilizer, and lime that meet label claims so they don't burn or undersupply plants they're supposed to. So now we'll move to the spotted lanternfly part of the presentation. This is a new pest found in New York State in 2020 as a live population, and was in neighboring states for the last few years. And I don't know if any of you have heard of SLF, but we'll get into detail in this section of spotted lanternfly. I'll say SLF sometimes just to abbreviate it. A lot of other agencies throughout the country are taking steps to stop the spread of this pest, including the USDA. It was first discovered in Berks County, PA, near Philadelphia in 2014, and it quickly spread to the surrounding states, as you can see from these 3 maps that chart the progress of its spread. It's thought to have arrived on a slab of stone shipped from China. Here's the most current map. It was discovered in New York in 2020. The dots on the red dots within the counties represent individual insects that may have been found. Usually they've been dead, but no active infestations have been found in those counties. The areas highlighted in blue are where active infestations, including egg masses, have been found. And the areas highlighted in red have been quarantined. New York State has an external quarantine with regulations in place, preventing items from these areas from moving into New York State. And those areas that are blue, that don't yet have the red outline, will soon be added to our quarantine list. So spotted lanternfly is a pest that pierces the plant tissue with their straw-like mouth parts and suck the fluid out of the plant. They'll feed on over 70 different species of plants, including grapes, apples, hops, maple trees, walnuts, etc. And they excrete this sticky honeydew substance. It attracts a sooty mold thereafter, which can cover up a plant and interfere with photosynthesis and will negatively affect the growth of that plant and the fruit yield. It also can impact the quality of life in an area where it's raining down this sticky substance, and it gets on everything. It'll get on your house, your deck, your car. It'll actually take the paint off your car. I've seen it happen. And nobody wants to be outside in that. It's gross. So the scientific name of spotted lanternfly is Lycorma delicatula. It's a plant hopper, so it's similar to a grasshopper, but it's also similar to an aphid in the way it sucks the fluids out of a plant. It's native to South Asia. As I said, it likely came in on a slab of stone from China. New York ranks 3rd state in the nation in grape production, second only to Pennsylvania and California, of course. So this insect is a big threat to our vineyards in the state. Pennsylvania, where the heaviest infestations are currently, the grape growers are not only seeing a loss in grape yield, but also dying vines. So there's a lot of different pests that would feed on a grape, but there's not actually a lot that kills the grapevine completely, because those vines could live for hundreds of years. So this is a big issue for these vineyards. As for apple orchards, apple production in New York is second only to Washington State. So it's a very important crop to our New York farmers and citizens, and frankly, the rest of the US that also get New York apples imported. So this is a map of the likely natural spread of SLF in the US, just where it could spread naturally on its own, potentially. This doesn't factor in the spread by human means, like transport on a car, unintended transport, and I'll get more into that later. So for this slide, I'll focus mainly on the egg mass, but the other life stages are also important. The egg mass on the left is glossy or shiny in color. As they dry out, they're not as shiny and they can have a lot of color variation from gray to brown to tan, even to white, and they will crack over time. The photo to the left is uncovered eggs that have hatched out. So sometimes they don't cover their eggs completely. Sometimes they do. And they're about the size of a sesame seed. And each mass will have about 50 or so eggs. Once they hatch, they start out very tiny, like in the bottom picture of this slide. And that insect is actually on the very tip of a pine needle. So that's how small it is. Each time they shed their exoskeleton, they'll grow a little bit bigger. And the fourth time, they'll become red, like on the left side of the picture. And this is when people normally notice it in their environment because of that bright red color. And they'll be about the size of a pea. Then they'll metamorphose and emerge as an adult with wings, often seen here as the top center photo. The fore wings are slightly translucent with black spots, and the hind wings are bright red. So when they're folded down, they'll have that pinkish hue. And this is often how you'll see them in the wild with this lateral view, folded wings. And they'll be crawling on branches and vines or other objects, rather than with its wings spread looking like a moth, which you'll see a picture of in a little while. So here in New York, egg masses have been observed as early as September and as late as June. They'll be more prevalent. So the egg mass life stage is the most prevalent, and you can see them from the end of October to even to May, beginning of June. Then the first through third instars, when they're black, are found April to July. The fourth instar will start to emerge in July also, and with their red bodies, and will be like that through September until they metamorphose into adults, which also starts in July. And those will be present until the first hard freeze of the year. A light frost will slow them down, but they'll stay alive. So they really need that hard freeze to actually die off as adults. When we survey for spotted lanternfly, one has to be very careful. They'll lay their eggs on sheltered areas like the undersides of branches. This includes non-organic objects. The center photo here is of a railroad section. So you could imagine how many millions of feet of railroad there are in the country, and they'll lay their eggs right on top of that. And then that photo on the left, it's the fourth and third instars. They can both be present at the same time. And then that photo on the right is just they're pretty, but once you get that many of them, it's not pretty anymore. We have two methods that we use to detect for spotted lanternfly presence besides our visual survey. The first is a circle trap, which is comprised of a cone covered with mesh that funnels into a plastic bag. It's not only good for detection, but to get an idea of how many SLF might be in an area. And these traps will be checked weekly. The less that we catch in a trap during a week, then that actually indicates a smaller population. The second is a bug barrier trap, which is a layer of translucent tape similar to the fly paper. And it's held onto the bark by a cotton strip to create a cup underneath. So SLF will walk down a tree and over the tape, then back up into that opening underneath the cotton and get stuck on the green tape. So this doesn't indicate the size of population in an area like the circle trap does, but it's more detecting if they're in an area or not. And this method also prevents capture from non-target species, such as birds and squirrels, that could otherwise get stuck if the sticky side was facing out. I just saw in the chat, somebody asked, what is in the traps that attracts the bug? The traps aren't baited as of right now with anything. We actually don't know exactly what hormone or what have you attracts the bugs, but they're often put on trees that the insect has an affinity to go to, such as tree of heaven. That's actually its favorite tree. It's another invasive species. So typically it's just where the trap is placed and on what species of tree is what attracts it. So this is the first instar stage of the insect. Right after it emerges from those egg masses, you could see the egg mass on the far right has some tiny openings where the insects hatched from. And these are very small. They're often confused for a tick. That's how small they are. These are instars that have grown up a bit and are more distinguishable as Spotted Lanternfly as a later instar. Here we have the red fourth instar, which is much more noticeable in this stage. And this is the adults with the wings extended, though they are more often observed with wings folded and closed. They'll exhibit the open wings when they're spooked, and they will be scared by like just a person approaching them. And that's when they'll fly away. So from left to right, we show a close-up of eggs. And those look like to be still unhatched eggs. Then the center, there are some old hatched out eggs, which you can see they look a little weathered. They're flaking off. And then the egg mass on the far right is shiny, and that's how they look when they're first laid. They have a moist look to them. So this is just to show you how tiny they really are. It's an example of hatched eggs. They emerge out of that linear hole, and you can see how small they are compared to that penny. The two photos on the left here are of older egg masses. The one on the far left, those egg masses are uncovered, but looks like the insect had no problem emerging. You can see some holes in the eggs. The one in the center compared to the right, you could see how they're very different colors, just to show the variability of the coloration of the covering of the egg mass. So some of these are on wood, trees. Looks like maybe the one on the right is on stone. Here we have one on what I think is wood, but they, like I said, they can lay their eggs on almost anything. This one's old. You might find egg masses that are old and hatched out in the middle of the year when other life stages aren't present. This is always still worth reporting to your local Department of Agriculture, USDA, what have you, because they might still be in the area, even if you don't see any alive in the area right now. Here are some egg masses that are covered and appear to have dried. They still have that light coloration, but really, at first glance, I mean, that could just be some mud that got onto the park bench or whatever it is. Here on the left, you can see an adult between a covered egg mass and some uncovered eggs that are not laid in the same pattern and as numerous as the ones we typically see. Sometimes maybe the adult will get spooked and stop laying, which might have happened when someone was taking this picture. And then on the right is an example of what makes finding and stopping the spread of this insect so challenging. Spotted lanternfly will lay its eggs on anything, including objects that move from place to place, like tires. And this could look like mud just on the tire. Makes identifying them even harder. Here's another example involving unintended transport on a vehicle, but they can also be moved on recreation equipment, kayaks, canoes, ATVs, tree stands, camping equipment, anything outdoors really, including patio furniture. And these are things that can be transported from a person's home to maybe a campsite or a vacation home or a hunting location. Having the eggs hatch out and causing other infestations in wherever they're moved to. Here you can see their affinity for rusty metal underneath this tail light housing of a tractor trailer. And this could easily be hooked up, moved to another state and left there, causing another satellite infestation. On the right there, there's a dead adult actually underneath the grill on the radiator of this truck. And this was found at a checkpoint inspection in New York. The spotted lanternfly could easily crawl in there, take shelter, and emerge at a new location. So really, it's humans spreading the insect. The spotted lanternfly won't spread that far on its own because it doesn't really, it can't fly very far. It more hops and glides on wind currents. So the unintended transport by humans is the activity we're most likely to see as a means of spread and that we're most concerned about. Can you find the egg masses? So these really blend in, which might be the strategy that spotted lanternfly intends when covering its eggs. You can see these dried out, cracked a bit. Can you see them here? We have eggs laid on concrete. Again, blending in very well. You could kind of see the outline of those rows of eggs underneath the mud-like covering. These are sheltered a bit under a picnic table. You can see the rows under the fresh covering. And again, these are laid on the underside of branches, are cracked and dried. And just between these, you could see some color variation. One's white, one's tan, some are uncovered. So if you find any signs of SLF, any of the life stages, including egg mass, nymphs, adults, you can contact us, even if you don't find them in New York State, because we will relay the information to other state agencies or the USDA. Next step would be to try and capture the insect or squash it, and then keep it in a container, an airtight container, preferably in your freezer or with some alcohol or hand sanitizer to preserve it. And that's so whoever responds to the report can confirm that it is in fact spotted lanternfly. Take photos, maybe before you smash it, so we can also confirm that it is spotted lanternfly, and always note the location, whether that be an address, directions, GPS coordinates, and you could email us even if you suspect and aren't sure, or we're always happy to take a look. And with that, I'll open the floor for questions.
So first of all, thank you very much. This is quite fascinating. Question, a couple questions. What happens if we wouldn't take care of this? Meaning if we just let this continue without inspections, what would actually happen? Like have there been any other, let's say historical, not necessarily this specific lanternfly, but in general, the regulations of these bug populations, what's the doomsday? They would ruin our grapes forever, or?
I don't know if it would ruin grapes forever, but it's they do kill grapes, unlike other pests.
I
that
noticed
attack
that you
grapes.
wrote that. That's why I asked that.
Yeah. So really, a lot of it just makes it harder for farmers. You know, it's another pest they have to deal with, and this one's particularly bad. It doesn't mean that there aren't actually like sprays and pesticides that kill the pests. There's ones being researched and approved for that. There's other methods of control, but really the best method of control right now is prevention, since we're not too far into the infestation in the United States. So it can buy us some time stopping the spread to find ways to manage the spotted lanternfly. There's another example of an insect like this, which doesn't spread quite as easily, but we have had success controlling is Asian longhorn beetle. Asian longhorn beetle, it drills into certain species of trees. Maple in particular is of concern because of the maple syrup industry. And the first place it was present was in New York City. And that population was actually declared eradicated last year, happy to say. But if that wasn't managed, if that was just let loose, I mean, it could potentially kill all the maple trees in our forests. And management would be much harder if we didn't actually survey for it and know where it was and just let it go everywhere.
So one of the questions I guess that came up in the chat based off what you just said. So let's say you do find them. How do you get rid of them?
Right now, I can't.
Lanternfly.
Oh, right now I can't recommend any pesticides.
No, but what do you as the state do, I think is really his question.
Oh, so we'll go out when we find populations. There's only been a few. One is in Orangeburg, New York. The other is in Ithaca, New York. And then there's another, the worst one is actually in Staten Island, right next to New Jersey, because it's New Jersey is heavily infested. Orangeburg is also next to New Jersey, so you could see how it's spreading that way. But we'll squash the egg mass into the tree or whatever it's laid on, scrape it off, not onto the ground, but into a container, because we don't know if those scraped off eggs can actually still like hatch out if they're just like scraped onto the ground. So we'll put in a container and dispose of it. When they're high up in trees, because they actually do like to lay their eggs pretty high up, if we can reach with a pole saw, pruner, scraper, we'll use that. Otherwise, we have to hire tree climbers to come in or remove the tree completely, which a lot of times there are on invasive trees that we want to get rid of. So that removing the tree isn't much of an issue there.
And then another question. Is that one egg mass from one fly?
Yeah, so the spotted lanternfly females can lay up 100 to 150 eggs.
Wow.
And each egg mass is about 50 eggs. So they'll lay a few egg masses.
Wow. You have a question coming from Woodstock, New York. As soon as they unmute their mic. And then there's also someone on here from Pennsylvania who she also wants to say something, but she wrote in the chat that she actually sees them on her 6th floor balcony, and really annoying. They're annoying to her as well. But
yeah, I mean, when you get that many, they're pretty gross.
And you said they lay this stickiness that would be even if they were on a person?
Yeah, their excrement. So their excrement, not their eggs, is a nuisance. It's like a nuisance insect in that way, where the sticky, slippery substance that grows mold on it can.
Wow. How far west do they go?
How far west? I think the
You
furthest
mentioned
west,
like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York.
Yeah, I could. I'll pull up the map again, the latest map. There's a county adjacent to Pennsylvania in Ohio, which I think is the furthest west they've been detected of an infestation. You see that?
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what county that is because the print is too small. But
can you go back one to the map of the entire United States?
Sure.
What this is so it actually has. They're not afraid that it hits Arizona as much. You're saying why do they only assume kind of half the United States?
So I think this map needs to be updated. It's not exactly the most accurate map. This is for like natural spread rather than human spread. Yeah. So I would say potentially could get to Arizona if a human transported it. But there might not be as many crops in Arizona that the spotted lanternfly likes. The high heat in the summer might not be helpful for its adult life stage. Yeah, it's a different environment compared to the eastern United States. So that might be why a lot of the Rockies and the desert ecosystems are.
Actually, before you speak with Stan and Betty, you're going to ask a question. One of the things I think I find interesting, I wonder if others, I do a lot of road trips, and you mentioned about the truck inspection. Mm-hmm. That's only for commercial cargo, not like let's say when we drive from Phoenix to California, there's actually a inspection stop for cars, specifically for bugs, pests.
Yeah. I've driven over the border, that way from Arizona to California, and I stopped at that inspection station for just passenger cars. They're very protective of their agriculture there for good reason. But our inspections are only for trucks. It's an infrastructure and a system that's already in place. You see, if you go on road trips, there's truck inspections on these interstates all over the place. So it's kind of just something that we can build into the existing system and infrastructure in that way.
Oh, so you're saying those truck inspections are actually not necessary for agriculture? You just include an inspector there?
Yeah. And there's a permit. There's permitting from different states. I think all states recognize each other's permits for a spotted lanternfly. So that'll be checked as well.
Wow. Okay, so now Betty or Stan, I don't know who had the question or.
My question wasn't particularly about the fly. I was concerned about the ash trees. The problem
yes.
with ash trees.
The ash trees. It's sad. The emerald ash borer spread very quickly and has killed a lot of timber. But not all of it. There's still live stands out there, and that's what we're targeting with some parasitic wasps that they predate the larval stage of this emerald ash borer beetle. There's 3 different species of wasp that we actually release into the forest, and we're hoping that they persist in the environment to combat the emerald ash borer, and that it reaches an equilibrium, so a balance between the parasitic wasps and the emerald ash borer, so that our ash stands can grow back and be a viable timber again.
How widespread is that in the country?
It's very widespread. I think it hopped the border from Michigan over the Canadian border into Michigan, and I know it's as far south as North Carolina, and I think it's infesting much of the eastern U.S., but not the western U.S., luckily.
Question before Rosalind speaks up. I know that you mentioned New Jersey has quite an infestation. Is your concern that they don't do enough inspection wise to curtail it, and that's why New York is dealing with it to begin with?
I'm not that familiar with the way New Jersey has approached their spotted lanternfly infestation, but in light of, in hindsight, it probably could have been better considering how infested they are, and it's hopping the border over to New York. So it probably could have been better, and hopefully it gets better.
So on that note, you don't work together in that regard? Because I remember one of the things that Robert mentioned to me is that you work with federal counterparts as well.
Yeah, we work with New Jersey, but like I was in a meeting with some people from New Jersey Department of Agriculture just a couple days ago, and we try and coordinate as best we can between all our partners. That's something that I'd say at least 50% of my job is just coordinating with other partners. Like we also like work. There's other agencies within New York State. There's other state agencies. There's our federal partners, nonprofits, even. So yeah, coordination is key.
Got it. All right, Rosalind, you're up.
Yeah, we have a real problem here in Pennsylvania where I live, but I don't think it's as bad in Western Pennsylvania, but it's really bad in Eastern Pennsylvania. And my son has a garden and he can't do, he's fighting them all the time. And I can't leave anything out of my balcony, any plants or anything, because they just jump all over them. Actually, when they're adults, they're quite pretty if you want, when you don't have a lot of them around when they open their wings. But I wonder if there's anything I can do so that we couldn't sit out on our balcony at all, because as soon as those things are there all day long, they start coming about, I'd say about noon, and they stay all day. And of course now I don't see them, but now I'm not out in my balcony anyway. Because of the snow, etc., but which you don't know about in Arizona. But anyway, is there anything I can do or my son can do with his garden?
I'm sorry to hear that about your son's garden and your balcony. It's good you're on here to give everyone a real life perspective on this.
They're terrible.
Yeah. So we're trying to stop them. We're trying to get people to know that it's not just agriculture. It's just like your relaxation.
Well, when they're little, when they first start coming, first I didn't know what they were. So I figured they look a little bit, I don't know, like
black ladybugs.
That's well, this, so I try to you try to stamp them out, they jump. You can't get them to stamp on the, they're horrible. They're just horrible. I just wonder if there's anything that can be done, you know, in my situation, in my son's situation. They've ruined his garden.
What about netting?
There's things like bug netting that you could put over your, a garden's crops. It's like can be expensive though. Of course, screening in your porch is an option. There's different bug sprays you can buy at the store that might help kill the bugs or keep the bugs away. I can't recommend anything in particular because that's not really in my job description, but you can do things. I would say try what you can.
Might go into one of the stores and ask them what they've got. Although I from what I heard before, there was no spray that was really effective. So.
Well, email us and I'll put the email back up. and
Okay.
email us, and maybe I could send you over some more detailed recommendations.
I
Maybe
appreciate that.
vinegar. Rosalind, put some vinegar on there.
Vinegar all over my balcony.
I don't know. I'm joking, by the way. I do not work for the New York State Department of Agriculture. Do not
Yeah.
take my advice seriously.
Spotted. All right, let me copy that down. Spotted lantern fly.
Michael, while she's typing that, how long did you say that you guys have been working on this one? Because one of the questions in the chat is, for example, is there a possibility to sterilize the males and then return them to the population, which would make mating ineffective? And I wonder if that's done to any population in general. And if it is, like, obviously you said that this is fairly new.
So that wasn't, I don't know of any research about sterilizing males, but similar research has been done and similar management has been done in Pennsylvania with its favorite tree, the tree of heaven, where they will cull the female trees that produce seed and help spread the tree and leave the male trees. And then they act as a trap for the spotted lanternfly, and the spotted lanternfly will go to the male trees, and you can manage them from there now that you have them on the tree. But as for sterilizing the insects, I haven't heard of any research on that.
Is that, I got you. All right, that was for Paula. She's also an East Coaster living in Arizona now, but still a family there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and obviously for me, the way I look at this is obviously when I do go to New York, so if you see that, it's always good to know, but it's in general, this is the gist for any of these, I'm going to call them populations that are infestations that need to be getting rid of. So Arizona, for example, has its own unique ones. I don't know what destroys cacti or other plants that we have here, but that's the idea. So
yeah, you want to check your vehicle when you're going on your road trip, just in case.
Yeah, that was interesting to see the like what you showed in the tire well.
Yeah, they'll be. They could go underneath your car. I mean, trailers, really anywhere. That's what's so hard about controlling this insect.
Are there
So
any,
sorry, go for it.
Are there any natural predators? I mean, do birds eat them?
So
someone did write that, or bats.
That red color is like a warning to other animals. Say, hey, don't eat me. I taste bad, and they probably do. That's why like birds don't eat them. I've heard of like people's dogs eating them, and some dogs will eat anything. But
the spiders can get. I saw one in a spider web, so I guess the spiders can get them.
They may trap them. They may not want to eat them.
There's natural predators in Asia where they come from, and there's research being done on pathogens and parasitoids like the wasps that we use for emerald ash borer I mentioned earlier, and there's also some fungus that has been seen to parasitize the insect, the spotted lanternfly. So those are like methods of relatively natural control, natural predators.
I was going to ask, in China, if they came from China, how is China controlling them?
It might be also just the way the environment is. There's just enough to keep them in check there, to keep the population in balance with the rest of the environment.
Pretty fascinating. So how long does it typically take? I guess this isn't the first time we have something that has sort of appeared in the United States, and there's that, let's find them, figure out how to deal with them. How long does it typically take before you'll have sort of a more robust solution system? Meaning, is there a precedent that you'd say it's about 3 years, 4 years before we have a good understanding with labs and
Robert, are you here? Are you on here?
I think Robert's on here. Let me see if this is, he can't, let me ask him if that's him on the iPad. Let's see, hold on. Oh, Robert, is that you? I don't know. I see an iPad on, no talking. Hold on. If it's him, we'll get him to unmute. If not, we'll come back to that one. I'll ask him, get everyone the answer.
I can't give you an exact timeline. There's a lot of research already being done. Sometimes it just takes getting approved to release some of these things into the environment. But unfortunately, right now, we don't know.
And who funds that? Or is that like, there's schools and research studies and...
I would say a lot of the funding is federal. Like when I get parasitoids for emerald ash borer, it comes from the USDA. So a lot of the funding's federal, but yes, there's like universities that get funding from different places that are doing this research. Like Cornell in New York does a lot of this research. Penn State in Pennsylvania does a lot of this research. There's a lot of people trying to figure this one out.
Got you. All right, this was really fascinating. Thank you for your presentation and all the time that you put into this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any last questions for Michael? All right, I think we're good. This was